Hi everyone, I'm Vone Kevitz, knit and crochet designer for one-of-a-kind makers who dare to be original, and I have somebody who is super original. The beautiful Coletta Peterson from A Touch of Blu Designs. Hi Coletta.
Hey, Vone. How are you this morning?
I'm fantastic now that you're on here with me. I've been trying to
Awesome.
get her on forever. You guys,
Forever.
Coletta, tell everybody who you are.
Like Vone said, I am Coletta Peterson, the face and hands behind A Touch of Blu Designs, where I make mostly brown and black dolls for brown and black girls and boys, and the occasion. Um, as of late, I have been really big into um, fantasy dolls, and my favorite fantasy doll to date happens to be this cutie right here. This is Giselle the Forest Fawn. She was a doll that I made for Halloween, and she's just hanging out in my Etsy shop. And I kind of didn't want to list her simply because I don't really want to let her go, but this is one of my fantasy dolls that I made for Halloween. And I occasionally find inspiration from the little people that I run into around, around town or just in my life. And so this particular little boy, this is Logan. Logan was inspired by a little boy that I met when I was a resident at the local artist market. And he was introduced, he's the nephew of their social media coordinator. And he comes into the shop and he's running full speed and he's like, look at my outfit. And I took a picture of it and I was like, I have to figure out how to make that outfit into a doll. And so it took me about a month to actually find the time to make it, but I did, and I love him. And he's been claimed by another maker, but I have to figure out how to write the pattern up because I completely freestyled the whole thing. So that's Logan. And then I have my personal favorite, my mascot that I had at the artist market. This is Blue.
Yes.
This is my favorite doll. She is not based on my pattern. She is based on a pattern from another maker, but I absolutely loved how she turned out. And so initially when I was making her, she was going to be up for sale. And then the more I made her, she was talking. It's not weird. Occasionally, as a doll maker, my dolls tend to talk to me while I'm in the process of making them. And so as I'm working on her, she's like, yeah, I'm kind of yours. So kind of do what you want. Just know that you're not going to sell me. And so by the time I was done with her, I was like, yeah, she's not going in the Etsy shop.
Wow.
So
She's the
that's who I
mascot.
am.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's the mascot. Oh my God, Coletta, you've touched on so many so many things that I don't even
did
know where
not.
to start. Let's stay focused on my questions because there's so many things that I do want to come back around. How did you get started on your creative journey?
I've always been a really creative person. Um, it's just it always has expressed itself with using my hands and some sort of fiber or beads. I can remember very distinctly as a child growing up in the 80s when beaded and sequin purses were like all the rage. My mom would always have them, and I remember one day she'd come home and she had this beautiful beaded purse. It had this floral motif on it, and all the beads were really iridescent. And so I kind of snuck in her room and took the purse and picked all the beads off and stitched them onto a bandana. So they were paisley now. And when she found out, I got into the biggest trouble. Oh my God, I got into so much trouble. I think I was grounded for like a month. And as a 9-year-old being grounded for a month, it was the worst punishment ever. But then she started bringing me beads or purses home that she'd found at the thrift shop. And she was like, you can just destroy this all you want. Just don't touch my stuff. And so it kind of grew from there. I had teachers who would teach. I went to
Hold on, I think my internet connection is slightly going downhill. I'm not sure.
And
Okay.
so I have an
Wait,
art
Coletta,
teacher.
Coletta, you just came back. You
Oh,
it froze up at when you went somewhere.
oh, third grade, maybe elementary school I was referring
Yes.
to. I went to what was called an open education school. And
Okay.
so I had an art teacher. There was really no set curriculum. And so the art teacher would introduce different medias, pottery and embroidery and painting. And I fell in love with all of it. And so, slowly but surely, I love pottery. I suck at it, but I love it. But I loved embroidery, and so I would do that every now and then. But as time grew on, I kind of set all of that to the wayside. And about 6 years ago, I was doing a contract job for the government. I've been working it for about 5 or 6 years, and I ended up getting laid off one day.
Mhm.
And came home and had a pity party for about a week, just a little pity party for one. And
Yeah.
one of my friends called me and she goes, "Are you done now? Are you done? Because there's really no reason for you to sit and bemoan the fact that you don't have a traditional job. You have all of these creative talents that you are just holding on to. Figure it out. What is it that you want to do? You really should work for yourself. Figure out how to mesh all your talents together and make them work for you." And I'd been trying to teach myself to crochet for years, but as a left-handed crocheter, it was always very difficult for me to learn. And so I kept at it, and I made a bunch of dish towels and a bunch of scarves. And in my boredom, I'd taken a part-time job at Michael's as a restock associate. And so during breaks, I would crochet, and there were other crocheters, and they were like, "What are you doing? It's all wrong. You have to switch everything. You're left-handed, do it backwards." And it just kind of clicked. And so also around that time, a friend called and she was like, "I'm having a baby. Can you make me a doll?" And I'm thinking, "Girl, I make dish towels and scarves and hats. You want a doll? I can make you a doll." And she was like, "Well, you have time. Just, try to figure it out." And so the first doll I made, which is packed up, I wish I'd brought it out. Oh, she was a mess. I'd gotten her limbs mixed up. They were tubes. So she had one long arm, one short leg, one long leg. She was a mess, but I loved it when it was done. And
Mhm.
so I perfected it. I finally got it to where I wanted it to look. It took about a year of me following other people's patterns and figuring out how they combine their stitches together. And I started taking classes with another maker just to hone in my techniques.
Mhm.
And then I finally said, "Okay, I think you got it. Try to write, how you want your dolls to look. Try to figure that out. How would that look on paper for you?" And so I slowly but surely started writing out this doll pattern and perfecting it. And I started using it for all of the dolls that slowly, the custom orders that started coming in, which initially was very shocking for me. Like, I thought technique wise, I was just okay. And the fact that someone would want to actually pay me money to make something for them was kind of mind blowing and completely unexpected. Not at all what I'd set out to do. I just wanted, just some supplemental income just to keep me from being bored sitting at home while I still job hunted. And the first few dolls, they picked up. More people started ordering from word of mouth. And then I was like, all right, revamp your Instagram page. Because initially, a touch of Blu Designs, I was doing jewelry. Um, and so I revamped and rebranded, and it just took off. And I've been making dolls and plushies and little security blankets for the
Mhm.
last 4 years, and I've loved it.
Coletta, you've I can't- I think you're just going to leave me speechless. I'm just going to sit here and listen to you. There's so many great gems in your entire journey. You know, I feel like I your friend is golden, by the way.
Oh, she is.
Golden to not if if you don't have that kind of a support system in your life, you need to figure out how to get it, cultivate it, and because to have that, on your shoulder with you
Yeah.
is just, it's everything, you know, to have a support system. But that's why, and if you don't, come join the Dare to Be Original Facebook group, and there's a whole
Yes.
bunch of makers in there that
Yeah.
will come in and cheer you on and give you that support that you need, because she quickly snapped you out of, because you know, I feel like in life we face adversity day in and day out, small,
Yeah.
tiny, big, huge, catastrophic.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're minor, but they can trip us up or they can render us catatonic.
Yeah.
And we have to have fail-safe systems that get us back into place and keep us
Yeah.
moving. I think that
Yeah.
is one of the reasons why I keep going on these YouTube videos, because if anybody ever comes across it, that's just my one message, is to keep going. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Creating, keep making. And then we have issues. And I remember there was a diversity talk in the Facebook, in the in Instagram, you know, all that stuff. And I'm always like, you guys, stay focused on your creativity. Let whatever happen out there. Stay focused on you, because that's what, you know what I mean? That is the most important. Because in the end, when we're at the end of our life, we don't look back at the adversities, you know what I mean, that trip us up.
Right.
We never do. We never get hung up on that. You know what, we end up regretting the things that we don't finish, regretting the things
Yeah.
that we don't start, regretting the things that we don't pursue. And all those things out there that were problems, they're not in your final days. You know what I mean?
Right.
Sitting there
Right.
with you, you know? So that's why our goal each day is to get up and keep moving and pursuing the life that we want. And your
Yeah.
friend like just gave you that nudge that you needed. And I'm so glad that you found ways to figure things out. Like just everything that you've said, if you guys haven't like paid attention, the gems, everything that Coletta has touched on, when we make something, you know, you start off with a dish rag, which is a square. You didn't know how to knit and crochet. And now look at the creations. Like, and I get why you have like now it actually makes so much sense to me, because your dolls are so intricate. I make dolls. I used to make dolls. So this is how Coletta and I became like doll sisters when she
Yeah.
first jumped on the Dare to Be Original Facebook group. And I remember one of your posts was talking about pricing and posting the
Yeah.
value of your worth. And I'm
Yes.
so glad that I can see you like in your element and feeling the confidence that you know what you're worth. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But those things,
Yes.
and those things, like the dolls that you're making, they're so intricate. And the fact that when you don't have a pattern, you just make one. The fact that
Yeah.
when you learn it, when you learn something, you mark it down and you make it your own. I'm so glad that you came on today. Just my biggest gem from you being on today is the fact that I know that you have a doll pattern. So make sure you send me that link to
I
the
will.
specific doll pattern, because I have a #1 viral video on my YouTube channel that is stranding doll hair. It's an hour long of me just stranding doll hair. Coletta, I kid you not, I think I'm over 75,000 views on this thing.
Oh, wow.
And it brings in subscribers every day because doll makers keep coming. So there are doll makers out there.
Yeah.
And Coletta is not in short of fighting. Like we were both doll makers. We're not fighting to sell dolls because there's not enough doll makers
There
to
are
go around
not.
the world. Do you know what I mean?
There
All
are.
we could do is share our craft and get more makers to, you know.
Yeah.
But but they're always asking me, do you have a doll pattern? Do you have a doll pattern? And I don't have a doll pattern. I followed a My Crochet Doll book. I don't even
Yep.
remember the author, like
First,
that
it was
person. I,
it was
I
my
got it
first
on,
doll pattern that I.
yes, I got it on clearance at the local clearance store, you know what I mean? And I was like, what is this? I'm like, let me see if I can learn how to make her, you know? And so I've been just following that pattern. And so I it's not my I'm not comfortable with using her pattern. So obviously I didn't, you know what I mean? All I did was film the things that weren't in the pattern. book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like basically the clothing, the hair, like she doesn't tell you how to strand the doll hair. I figured it
Nope.
out. And so therefore
Yep.
I filmed it. And therefore I think that's what it made it valuable, was because nobody ever told people how to do it. And the
Yeah.
way I did it worked for me. And so therefore they followed how I did it. But
Mm-hmm.
they're always asking me for a doll pattern. So now I'm so excited that I have a doll pattern to refer them to. So definitely leave me the link, and your doll looks like very similar. You know, they're basically all the,
Yeah.
I mean, they're basically very like they they got the head, they got the arms, they got the neck, you know. And I love
Yeah.
the fact that you said when you make your first stuff, people when people are new, we could put this in the newbie tips, you know. But when people are new, people they follow people that aren't new, right? So when we're
Yeah.
new, we end up like ragging on ourselves that we aren't good enough, or that I'm like, but you're not supposed to be
Oh,
good.
no,
You're
you're not.
you're
And
new.
I
Yeah,
that
your arms are gonna be longer than your legs.
always. There's always going to be a mashup somewhere when you're
Mhm.
first starting out. And I think for me, being when I was first new, the biggest issue for me was comparison.
Oh,
Um, my two favorite makers who are like mentors in my head now are Aniqua Wilkerson of My Kind of Thing and Yolanda Jordan of My Pretty Brown Doll. When I first started following them, they were so creatively intimidating
mhm.
because I would watch them and I'm like, oh my God, these dolls are amazing. Oh my God, I could never. And as I'm working, it's like, well, my doll does not like, you're like holding things up to the screen, like, well, that doesn't look like that. I followed the same pattern she followed. My stuff doesn't look anything like that. And not understanding or not knowing how many years of experience this person has versus me just starting out. And that is the biggest deterrent I find for a lot of people who are just starting out
Mhm.
is they run into one obstacle and they want to quit because they've
Mhm.
compared themselves to someone who they feel has it all together. And trust
Mhm.
me, I don't have it all together creatively. I'm always learning something.
Yeah.
Crochet for me is always, I'm always operating on a learning curve. And
Mhm.
so, I, even with my own pattern, I did a couple stitches. I changed something in the face shape and it gave me a heart-shaped face. And I didn't write it down, but I was done with the doll and I was like, oh, that's awesome. Now, how did I do that? How did I do this? Because even just looking at it, I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know where I changed the stitches. I just knew I changed the stitches because it fit what I needed to for this pattern.
Right.
But I really like how this worked out. So comparison kills so many dreams.
Oh.
And I wish that our self-talk to ourselves when we are comparing ourselves to others would be so much more positive,
Mhm.
and we would just keep going and pushing through. For me, that's been the biggest thing, just being able to push through even on the days when I absolutely don't feel like it,
Mhm.
just gathering that energy just to say, okay, I may not work like this person, my work may not look like this person's,
Right.
however, it is mine,
Mhm.
and I'm going to put it out there. Like
Yeah.
it or love it, I'm going to put it out there.
Yeah. That is a great tip. Do you have any more tips for newbie makers, because that's a big one. That's a packer. You take that one, you're golden.
Stitch markers,
Stitch
please.
markers.
Stitch markers. Like, stitch markers are your friends. I have so many people in my inbox who say, well, how do you keep your counts even? How do you know where you are? And I'm like,
It's one of them.
where is it?
This is one of them. There's billions of stitch markers out there.
I have
What's your
so
fancy?
many
Oh, you
stitch
know it.
markers.
Yeah.
I have stitch markers everywhere, and
Coletta,
I
that is a
find
great way to store your stitch marker. That with those rings.
it's
Oh,
on an ear post from Michaels.
you
I
are.
I found, and had a bunch of locking ones, and so I just leave them on here. And then I also have a little box that I just throw them in as I'm working.
Yeah.
And the same with my needles. I found an old Altoids box, and I
Yeah.
punch a bunch of magnets in there. And so I just throw my needles and my pins in there. And so if I knock it over, I'm not stepping on
Right.
pins and needles in the craft
Oh,
room. They're still stuck to the inside. Just, little things.
so
It's the
many
little
gems.
things.
So many gems. I'm going to collect all my stitch markers in that ring. That is
Yeah.
so clever. I love those rings. I'm always finding ways to store things in those rings, and I never thought to put my stitch markers on them. And I'm
And
always looking for my stitch markers. Always.
stock up on, you lose them so often on
Mhm.
stitch markers, you lose them. And I found I want to say 100 pack of stitch markers on Alibaba for like 75 cents.
Oh my God.
And I didn't even mind that it was going to take me a month to get them. I was just like, I'm
Yeah.
going to order a ton of these. I maybe have half of them because I'm such, like, when I'm working, or I use them to hold pieces together or to mark certain spots on dolls. And if I look in my work in progress bin, I just see just little stitch markers just sticking up, like, I'm marking your spot. I'm gonna need you to come back to me.
Yeah.
So the stitch markers are invaluable. And if you don't
Awesome.
want a stitch marker, a row counter, like,
Mhm.
huge projects, you never want to have to go back to
Just click, click,
count
click.
at one. Or even if
There's
even
various
using
types. Yeah.
yes, like
Even on
even
your cell
using your
phone.
mm-hmm.
Even on your cell phone, there's a bunch of apps, bunch of knit and
Yep.
crochet apps that count your rows, get a row counter, even just a piece of paper and and a
or
pencil, just start
or going
crossing like dashes and then a 5, so you know which rows you're on. Those
yep.
little things very much help you. That's awesome.
Yes.
Going
Yes.
back to stitch markers real quick. I have a bunch of different kinds of fancy stitch markers, but half the time I never can find when I need it. So what I end up
Yep.
doing is cutting a little strip, like an inch or two of yarn, and using that.
Yep.
I can't tell you the number of times when I was making those dolls, how many times I used the little strip of scrap yarn as my stitch marker because I could never get a hold of a stitch marker.
Or bobby pins.
Yes, or bobbin pins. That's awesome. Yes.
Hey, I've used
Great.
the paper clips covered in what is it, rubber or plastic. I've used those so they
Yes.
don't snag the yarn. Just,
Nice.
yeah,
That's a good one
everything.
too. Um, what is your big why for pursuing the solopreneur lifestyle?
I I've realized at some point in my life as I've gotten older that I like the freedom of being able to work for myself, being able to provide for my family and for my children in a way that doesn't tire me out. When I worked when I was in corporate America, I was working 60 hours a week.
Mhm.
And while the pay was good, the health insurance was fantastic, I missed out on a lot of my kids' lives. I missed out on a lot of sporting events, on a lot of plays and musical concerts, and just, that one-on-one mommy daughter time.
Mhm.
And they liked me being at home. I was a stay-at-home mom for 6 years. And when my youngest finally goes to school, I'm like, all right, time to go back to work. But I would see that shift as we're making that transition, that it was a really hard transition for everybody. And being on at work all the time was
Mhm.
tiring. And having to come home and switch hats and go into mommy mode, it was a big relief, because that I knew that, I can hug and cuddle and kiss, and there is no stress, there's no demand for, oh, I need this report in an hour, or we have this meeting that really could have been an email, or we've got all of these demands from work. When working for myself, I had all the time in the world to be mom and to be a maker and still be able to provide
Mhm.
for my kids, and to be able to do the things that I found joy in.
Mhm.
And being able to create has always brought me joy, always. And in making dolls growing up, well, let me rephrase, making Black dolls as a Black woman, you know, not wanting to bring the whole diversity conversation into this, because I know it's been had, but I think it's still a very important conversation. Like when I initially started making dolls, I would Google dolls, you know, crochet dolls, and there were always so many dolls, but there were never a lot of dolls of color. And so when I would find them, I was like, oh, that's cute. Well, let me go see if I can find a pattern. But there were never really too many patterns. And when we would find a pattern, it was never a published pattern. It was just, you know, personal pattern, not for sale. You can't use it, blah, 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 blah. And so being able to offer my perspective as a Black doll maker has been very rewarding. Being at the artist market, I was at a local artist market for 9 months. Just the look on the kids' faces who would stop outside the shop and they go, oh, that's me. Oh, that's amazing. And I have a menu board. I had a menu board with all of my skin tones that were available. And just to watch the kids of all races stand there and say, I can have this doll made to look like me. I can have, you know, my hairstyle, my eye color, because I do hand paint eyes every now and then. My eye color, my favorite outfit, and I can have this doll made to look like me was just, it was mind-blowing, and it was very rewarding.
Yeah.
Because I got to have really good conversations with parents and social workers and teachers who are in the trenches, and they see it every single day about, you know, how having that representation makes kids feel.
Yeah.
And so that was another, and I didn't realize that was part of what really made me want to continue to pursue being a solopreneur, until, you know, I really started to sit down and think about part of my big why. Like, why do you do this? Do I love to create? Absolutely. Do I love making dolls? Absolutely. But I also love what me as a Black woman in this arena represents. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes absolute sense. And I'm actually going to even branch out just slightly further, because that's actually the point. That's actually the point of every creative maker. That's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's not a talk of, not necessarily a diversity conversation, but that is the point of every single individual maker, is that you take perspective, you give your perspective, you know what I mean? And you create things from your eye point, you know, and that's why it is so important that we all create what we are made to create. You know what I mean? From our perspective. And when we don't use that, when we don't do it, when we don't learn the skills to cultivate it, when we give up and quit before we even start or halfway through because it got hard, this is what you rob people of, is your perspective, your creativity, your creations. You know what I mean? And that's the most important. That's why we have to get up every morning. That's why we have to keep moving. We have to keep pressing. For that reason, to put out the things that you were meant to, that only you can do from your point of view, from your perspective. You know what I mean? And that is gem, and that's golden to the world. And everybody in the world needs it, benefits from it. And like, I'm at a loss, but when you don't, that's what you rob them of. You know what I mean?
And I mean, you're doing yourself and the fiber arts and the world as a whole a huge disservice, especially if you feel that this is part of what you, if this is something that you want to do and suddenly it becomes rough, or suddenly, you know, there are things that are being discussed that you don't want to be a part of, and you say, you know, I'm done with it, I don't want to do it anymore. You're doing yourself a huge disservice. you are doing yourself a huge disservice.
I can't,
But
I did do a diversity video in reflection to this, and basically it was just to talk about my perspective of the conversation, and it's starting to gain some traction because I think it's a topic that's just coming up right now. But at the same time, I'm also offering a different perspective on the topic, because
yes,
I'm not about that hate and vitriol that consumes people, because my goal is to keep moving, right? And anything that
yeah,
shuts down is not going to help us. And if it shuts you down, it's not helping you. And I'm not,
not
and
at
not at all. So and so one of the comments that somebody had said to me, and she was a person not of color, and she felt really like she was thanking me for putting out this video because it calmed her heart, you know what I mean? Because she was thinking about starting her own knit and crochet shop or something, something in the creative, and putting her work out there. But because of all this talk, in this environment right now, she was terrified to do so, because if she doesn't address it, she's going to get attacked. If she says something and she says it wrong, she's going to get attacked. So not only is she battling, her own insecurities about her creations, if they're
all.
good enough, because that's a battle in and of itself, you know what I mean?
Yes,
That we have to
yes,
battle every time and gain confidence and put our work out there. Not only is she fighting that, but now she's fighting like the world's problems on top. I
yeah,
call them the world's problems because they're not yours. They're the world's problems that I was trying to infuse into your world. And she was just like, and when I was basically, my video is just to remind everybody that is out there. Focus on what's in here, what you can control, what you're creating, what you're making, what you're doing, and don't let all that come into your world. And when it felt like really good that she was like, maybe I will start. I'm like, I was like, can you imagine? Can you imagine if she doesn't do what she's supposed to do and put her
right,
work out there? Like, and that, so when you actually find all that and you have the courage, and you
yeah,
get there, and you see the result, it's magic.
it
It,
is, it
it's
is.
magic,
And I
and
think that you
it's a great
deny
world.
something, when you deny yourself something that is on your heart to do,
Mm-hmm.
the pull to do it becomes stronger. And
Mm-hmm.
you are either going to be forced to deal with, you're either going to have to step up
Yeah.
in some way and get it done, or you are going to let it consume you with regret.
With regret.
And you're
Yeah.
going to sit in the, oh, woe is me, I didn't do it, and I wish I would have, and now maybe it's too late for me to get into and do it. So I
Yeah.
think, for me, every time, well, not every time, but when things were
Yeah.
really rough, when I was really trying to pursue this and grow a touch of Blu Designs into, not necessarily, it's profitable, but at the end of the day, I appreciate it, and I'm so grateful for the support. At the end of the day, growing my business and growing my brand, there have been absolute hard times, and
Mm-hmm.
there have been times where I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore, and I'm done. I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing it. I'm putting my hooks up. I'm gonna do a yarn stash sale. It's a wrap.
Mm-hmm.
And then you sit on it and you're like, but that's not you. You
Yeah.
know that this is what you want to do. You feel that this is what you right now are being called to do.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
Get through this. Feel what you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Analyze it. Write it down if you need to. What are your pros and cons? If you leave, what do you do? What will
Mm-hmm.
that look like for you? What will your consequences be? If you stay, how will that feel? What
Mm-hmm.
will be the repercussions of you staying and seeing this through?
Yeah.
And so, if your list of pros outweighs your list of cons, then I kind of think, the universe is like, there's your answer.
Yeah.
Deal with it. So,
Or for what you're doing, you just think of that little girl.
yes,
That little girl.
yes,
You know what I mean? That's who you rock
yep,
from every
yeah,
time, you know?
yep.
when she doesn't have, when she, you know, the look in her eyes when something looks just like her, and you know,
Yeah.
that gives her possibility, gives her hope, and you didn't put
Yes.
it out there, and you didn't, and you stopped the work. That's
Yep.
who you rob from every time.
Yeah.
That's who you
Every
rob
single.
from. Yeah, every single time. So what is your making process? Because you've got
Oh,
serious.
it really all starts with, it depends on if it's a custom order or if it's Etsy inventory. If it's a custom order, I'll read over the invoice, get clarification, and make sure, all my ducks are in a row. I have all the yarn that I need. Does anything need to be ordered? And I always start with the doll's head. Because for me, the doll's head shapes the rest of the body. And no matter how symmetrical my stitches are, every now and then I go a little overboard, like this chick right here behind me. I was just working one day and I finished her head, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, her head is ginormous. Why is her head so big? Because I was on autopilot and I'm just
Oh.
working and working. And I realized I added one row of increases too many. But then by the time she was done, her head was done. And I was like, I kind of like it. Okay. So in my head, that sparked one other idea. So I marked it down and set her to the side.
Right.
But for Etsy inventory, I actually have a notebook of designs and things that I want to do. Every now and then on Instagram, I'll post a question like, I'm working on inventory. What things do you want to see? So right now I've got a bunch of requests for floral dolls, which I'm not exactly sure how that's going to look. Like spring dolls.
Oh, okay.
I've taken to trying my hand at sewing, trying to dust off those ninth grade sewing skills from home ec. Not sure how it's going to look, but I made a doll romper and it's super cute. So we'll see how that goes.
Coletta, I spent 2 hours watching YouTube videos on sewing, on learning that sewing machine this morning. So I'm taking my hand. I'm finally gonna tackle this beast.
Oh, and people make it look so easy.
That's actually what I'm trying to do. Is I'm conditioning myself watching all these videos like I'm a sewer. Eventually, I'm going to eat, breathe, and and live this sewing machine that I'm a professional sewer by the time I'm done. Consciously, like
I have a
bombarding
sewing
it.
machine, and it's gathered dust for about 2 years. Like I'll pull it out every now and then, but the thought hit me the other day, like, you should sew something. And I was like, but what are we sewing? Doll rompers. Like, I have so much fabric in my craft room, it's ridiculous. Like, you would think that I sewed all the time. I do not. I just like really pretty fabric. And so I have all this fabric, and when I was at the artist market, there was a clothing designer from Senegal who gifted me a bunch of fabric, of her fabric scraps. And they weren't even like, like scraps. They were like foot-long sections of scrap. And so she gifted me all this beautiful fabric from Africa. And I'm like, oh, what are we going to do with this? Like, my hands were like, yes, 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 we're going to make something. And in the back, my brain was like, girl, you can't sew. What are we doing? And so I've got a ton of fabric that I really just, I need to get into. But I also have all these other crochet ideas in my head. Like right now, I saw something on Facebook that I'm not going to publish. This is just me playing around with it. Another maker had made something, and I was like, that's kind of cute. Let me see if I can figure this out. So I've gotten to the point where I can kind of look at something and break the stitches down. So in my head, I'm breaking stitches down, trying to figure out how she did this. And I was like, oh, that's cute. I'll make me one just as a studio piece, but I won't, I'm not making them for anybody else. I just want to see if how I work this out in my head will translate into kind of what that looks like. So I've got like my making process is a little it's a little manic.
Mhm.
Like I'll start pieces, like I try to batch work, but it doesn't always work because sometimes, like I said, when I'm working on a doll, sometimes they're like, yeah, you're not going to start anything else. I kind of want to get finished. So
Yeah.
occasionally I will have nothing but heads or just nothing but arms. And
Mhm.
my kids will walk in my craft room and they're like, Mom, it looks like you dismembered a bunch of people in your room. What's going on? Like there'll be doll bodies, doll
Yeah.
heads, and I have a bin of nothing but limbs. And I'm just like, I should probably put these people together. And then they'll just sit there naked for weeks,
That's,
looking at me like, woman, where are our clothing?
yeah.
Please put clothes on us. So it kind of depends on
That's,
where I am.
yeah. I like the fact that I was wondering if you ever batch anything, but I do like the fact that you do batch because I'm a huge proponent of batching. So I'm glad when I was making dolls, I did batch a lot of the arms and the legs um, because it just streamlines so much things so
Yes.
much faster when you have
Yeah.
those things that but because your work is so custom. I mean, I just saw this gorgeous doll that you had of the doctor with the stethoscope. Oh my
Yes.
gosh, Coletta, my mind is always blown when I see your work because I don't people who don't make, they look at it and they go, wow, that's beautiful. People who
Yeah.
make look at it and go, holy cracker jacks, what in the world? Stitches, the techniques, the little intricacies that I'm like, where is she? What did she do? How did she get, you know what I mean? My mind is like,
Yeah.
I can't believe she did that. I can't believe she figured that out. I can't believe. And can I just tell you, I'm going back to watch this video again and I'm going to count how many times you use the word figure it out.
I
Figure.
do a lot of figuring
Oh,
it out.
you,
Like
Coletta, you,
I,
it's
I honestly, I
gold,
have my base doll pattern, and
gold.
the way the pattern is written for the way it was written for publication is not the way I work it when I'm making custom dolls.
Mhm,
Like occasionally I'll make it bigger, especially, or I'll have to make it smaller depending on the brand of yarn that I'm using. Because
mhm.
even if it's a 4-weight yarn, it works up like a 3, so it's kind of thin.
Yeah.
So I tend to modify my own pattern, and I figure things out as I'm working. And it's
Mhm,
really, I always tell people math has never really been my friend, but crochet math is completely different. And I don't think
mhm,
people get that. Like when you're sculpting things and you need things to look a certain way, there are very specific counts that you have to use.
mhm,
And I tend to figure all that out as I'm working.
mhm.
And I legit keep a stack of Post-its near me when I'm working, and I've got chicken scratch everywhere. And I'm working, and when I'm like, especially like for feet,
Yeah.
um, I had a doll request. They wanted a doll, but they wanted the doll to be able to fit Build-A-Bear shoes. Okay, sure, I'll figure this out. And I'm legit
Yeah.
making the foot, sitting it inside the Build-A-Bear shoe. Oh, no, this stitch needs to be this way, or it needs to fit the curve this way, and it
Wow.
needs to fit the back this way. And I'm just writing everything down. So when I make the other 3 feet, because it was a $2 order, how do I get this to work?
Yep.
And another doll that I'd made, I used my pattern, but they needed it to fit 1T clothing. She had her niece who was about to turn 2, but as a parent, there are always clothes that linger for
Mhm.
whatever reason. There are always clothes everywhere. And so her sister had a surplus of 1T and 12-month clothes that she was like, don't get rid of them. I'm going to have something made. And so she legit wanted this doll to be able to fit her niece's clothing. And so she brings me an outfit
Oh my God.
and she's like, can you make it fit this?
Oh
Sure. And so I'm in my craft room working, taking dolls apart, trying it again, making the
my
body, trying it again. And it, for me, that's just how I work. I'm always figuring things out as I work. And I guess that is part of my making process, unless I get, this is the reason why I don't do duplicates. That's the main reason I don't do duplicates. I don't know if I'd shared in the Be Original group, I'd made a doll based on Shuri from Black Panther. If I didn't share it, I'll go back and check. And if I didn't, I'll share it in the group. I completely free-handed this doll. I have a maker friend who's got this doll who's curvy. And when I got the doll order, they were like, I just need a Shuri doll. I kind of want her, not straight up and down like your regular dolls. But, you've got free reign, which I love. You've got free reign. Just, do what you want. And me being the comic book nerd that I am, I was like, you want movie Shuri or comic book Shuri? They were like, I don't really care.
Well,
just, do your thing. And so in my head, I'm meshing as we're going through this order, I'm meshing pieces together in my head. Like, okay, well, comic book Shuri is curvy. Well, movie Shuri is this and this and this, and I'm putting elements together. And when this doll was done, I did not want to hand her over. I was ridiculously, I was so proud of this doll. And I shared it in another group, and everybody was like, well, I want that doll. I want that doll. I need that doll. And in my head, I'm like, no. That's legit a one-of-a-kind doll. That doll absolutely cannot be duplicated. There was so much, like, from her entire torso was figured out as I'm working. Like, the stitching on it, if you handed it to me and said, how did you do this? My answer would be, I don't know. I don't know. I legit just, I was in the moment. And sometimes my kids get on me all the time. My one more row, my one more minute, give me 5 usually turns into hours. Well, Mom, what are you doing? You said we were going to do this. Well, Mom, it's past 6. We haven't eaten yet. Mom. And, I get into these creative zones where it literally feels like everything around me is just quiet and buzzing because I'm concentrating so hard on what I'm doing. And that's like the zone I was in the entire time I was working on this doll. And it turned out so amazing. And then I looked at it when I was done, and I was taking pictures of process, and I was done with it. And I was like, you didn't write any of this down. That's amazing. But it's just, I don't write. I find the dolls that I am most proud of, I don't write anything down just because it's go. Figure it out. Keep going. Or if I do write it down, it's just one itty bitty change in a stitch. And by the time I'm done and I look at it, I'm like,
does it even make sense? It doesn't make sense.
I'll throw it away. And then I remember, oh, well, I did that in this pattern. Where's the Post-it? And the Post-it's in the trash because I didn't know I would need it again. So.
That, if anybody is wondering what she's referring to, that is called the state of flow. When your creativity meets is everything in a line and time stops for your creation, that is you doing exactly what you were made to do. That is you in your complete element. And we all strive to find that one thing that keeps us in that state of flow. It's a natural high that until you do it, until you get it, you won't know about it. Do you have any habits or rituals that you do daily?
I do. My alarm usually goes off at 5:30.
You rival me.
I am one of those people who, it doesn't matter how late I stay up, I can't sleep past a certain time. And my alarm hits at 5:30 because that's when my oldest has to get up for school. Right. And she tends to sleep through her alarms. So Mom is like a backup, but my feet don't hit the ground until 6 o'clock. Then it's tea, coffee if I'm really feeling like I'm dragging. I take about an hour to do meditation and prayer just to focus as the kids are getting ready for school. They pop in, all right, Mom, breakfast is eaten, lunch is packed, we're leaving, see you later. the giant, he gets up and slowly lumbers through the day, and then the house is quiet. And then as I'm meditating and while everyone's getting ready, I'm plotting out my day. And most people do to-do lists for the day. I do will I lists for the day because I don't necessarily know what my day is going to look like. Like I can plot it out all day.
Yeah.
But instead of, for me to feel like I've actually accomplished something, which I find if I make a to-do list and I don't do anything on that list, even though I've had a productive day, I don't feel that I've done anything if I haven't checked anything off that list.
Yeah.
And so I do will I lists. Will I work on this doll today? Will I make X amount of pom-poms? Will I work on this doll today? Will I order these supplies? So if I look on that list and say, oh, I've got time, let me go ahead and do this, I can check that off the list. And so at the end of the day, when I go through my wind down ritual, which again is just tea and quiet time, and I'm a bit of a hippie, so I burn a lot of sage and Palo Santo and just get myself back to myself from whatever chaos of the day it was. What on that list did you do? And so I can actually, I journal too. And so I always start my journals out with, today I felt accomplished because I did this, 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 and this, instead of looking at a to-do list and saying, well, I didn't do any of that today. But, if I have the energy, I finished all this stuff on my will I list because I actually made the time. And I think for me, a to-do list seems like it absolutely 100%, you put that on your list for the day and it needs to be done today. And it kind of sets, for me personally, kind of feels like I kind of set myself up for failure if I don't get it done.
Yeah.
But on my will I list, okay, well, I did 4 of the 6 things that were on this list. I can move those other 2 things to my will I list tomorrow, as opposed to making an entire new to-do list. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. It absolutely makes sense. Those are great. See, this is why you're actually able to create in the capacity that you actually create. I'm not talking about time. I'm not talking about skill. I'm just talking about the headspace.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That you are able to handle on the intricacies of your dolls. This is why you're actually able to get the things seen, figured out, and everything, because you have the headspace and the capacity to process that, because you've instilled these habits and rituals to center you
and it's
back,
taken time.
to fill you. Yeah. I'm sure it has. I'm sure it has. You could see the benefits of it, and now I actually get the full picture of, like, now I know how you're able to create the creations that you have. Like when I saw that, like I said, that doctor one with all the intricacies of the stethoscope, I'm like, I know you didn't have a pattern. I know there's no stethoscope doll crochet pattern out there on YouTube that you know what I mean, that you can see. I know that there are various ideas of little things, but I'm like, the things that I'm watching you do, like, these are one of a kind, out of your head creations, that you're figuring out, and for you to have the headspace to be that creative and to figure those things out, like, you need rituals and habits that center you, so that you get all that stuff away, so that you can make room for this creativity. And now it makes full on sense, because for somebody who doesn't have a morning ritual and a nightly ritual, to come up and do the things that you have back there in your background, like, it's no way. That's why people sit and follow directions so much, that they're like glued to the patterns, is because their other stuff is so chaotic that they need order. But because you have order in your important part, which is your center self, you know what I mean? You have the capacity to deal with the outside chaos, which is creativity. You know, and that's actually why I asked this question. People are always wondering, like, I had to come up with some structured questions for these creative interviews, and people are always thrown off, like, why did you put habits and rituals in there? Because I'm like, we as human beings are, you know what I mean? We are, 80% habitual in everything we do: brush our teeth, the things, drive, eat, drink, everything we do, all habitual, you know, and even down to the clothes we wear, the decisions we make, there, so many things are habitual, you know,
And
that's
don't
why
and people
we,
realize that they're
yeah,
habits that they've fallen
yeah,
into.
yes. And then you don't realize their habits until you try to stop it. And then
Yep,
all of a sudden you're going against your own grain, and the things that you know are bad, you can't
yep,
figure out why you can't stop because they've become an ingrained habit. The things,
yep,
so, you know, to try to switch. And the other thing is you can't ever stop a habit. You can only replace the habit.
yep,
That's the key. So if you ever want to, uh, change a habit somewhere, you and wonder why you're not successful, is because you have to replace the habit with something else, and you hopefully
yep,
replace it with good habits. But
yeah.
that's just a side note. But that is why, and now I see the full benefits of it, the full on benefits of it. How do you invest in yourself
Oh man,
besides your
for
habits and
the
rituals?
for the longest, I did not. I business wise, it was always just make, 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 make. And take the occasional class. But I find that for business, investing in classes has actually helped my business so much. So I business wise, I invest in technique classes. Personally, I find that in order for me to be a better businesswoman, I actually need to take some days and not do social media, not make. And now that the weather's broken, I can actually take that time and walk through our subdivision and, take that time to, stretch and clear my head and just be. I try not to create, I know a lot of makers are like, oh, I create every day, all day, every day, and I can't fall into that.
Yeah.
I find that it's very draining for me. There are days where my best friend lives in the UK, and so she reminded me I had a bit of a breakdown. I was just so stressed out about something that happened with the business. I was stressed out about it, and she calls me and she says, "So, you do realize you haven't taken a break in a year?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You've canceled 3 trips with me. You don't take time off during the day, except for your walks. Everything is business, business, business. You're at the artist market Friday through Sunday. You're always on. You don't take time. You haven't done anything for yourself in a year. That's why you're stressed." And so 2 days later, via airmail, I had this FedEx package of calendars. And one she marked business only, and then the other one she marked as personal. And on the personal calendar, every other week she has marked, this is your day. Do nothing. Literally do nothing. And so she'll call me and she goes, "Well, it's such and such on your calendar. You're not supposed to be doing anything. Do you have your crochet hooks in your hand?" And I'm just like, maybe. Put them down. You're not supposed to do anything.
Yeah.
And so I find that when I take that time to not create, and there's a part of my head that's always creating. It's
Yeah.
always ticking. There's always some sort of design flowing. And I just make a little mental note, pop it in the compartment, and we keep it moving.
Yeah.
But there are literally days where I still wake up at 5:30. I still do my ritual, and I'm just here. I can spend that day reading. I can spend that day organizing stuff around the house. I'm a bit of a neat freak. So, if life with teenagers is messy. And so I'll go through the house and I'll clean up and, do all that jazz. But I find that if I'm not connected to a piece of technology, I'm good. Or if I am, it's because I'm binge watching something on Netflix.
Yeah.
And I don't really I don't watch a lot of TV except on Tuesdays when I'm watching This Is Us. But other than that, I find that I have to disconnect and unplug. Even if it's just for a day, it gives me such a great reboot the next day when I come back into my craft space. because there are days where just coming into the space it creates a lot of anxiety, even though I am very happy when I'm in this space, in my element, with my, button chair, hooking hands, working.
Yeah.
There are some days where just having to know that, well, you've got all these things in your order queue and this is what you should be working on. There are some days where it's just full of anxiety. And I noticed that on those days, I don't work well when I'm not, if I haven't given myself time to decompress. Does that make sense?
That is one of the best investments anybody can make on themselves, is time to decompress.
Yes.
That is absolutely, it's amazing how rare, and even for somebody like me also, to not. I'm actually on the opposite end of that now. I've gotten so well at decompressing that it's tough to get me going.
Yeah.
I'm actually on the opposite end of that, but I know exactly, because I've experienced burned out. I've experienced all that, because I've gone and never. And so to take that regularly, that's such a great self-care and such a great investment on yourself, Coletta, this has been such an amazing time chatting with you. I'm so glad you've offered so many great tips and such great advice. Like, I'm gonna go back and take notes for myself. I absolutely had a blast chatting with you. Thank you so much for doing this. You guys, all of her links are down below in the show description. Be sure to like and subscribe this video. Go follow her on Instagram, and her Etsy shop will be there too. Go check out her amazing creations. And she makes, that is, you have blue, and this is mine. This is mine that I never sold. This is the only one left that I have of mine. And she's me, and I made her when I had bangs, so This is right. This is what we do. Yeah. And notice that she's got mine has a scarf on it. If you're wondering what's.
Did you make her the Oh, that's your scarf with the was it a keyhole?
Yes. It's a double. Yes. That's the one. That's the one. So you guys, go check her stuff out. Be sure to comment if you have any questions for her. She'll definitely, I know she'll be super happy to answer you. And thank you so much, Coletta. Until next time, guys. Until next time. God bless. Bye.
Bye.